Patty, thank you so very, very much for that extraordinary introduction. I appreciate you so very much, and the feeling is mutual. Thank you, thank Laura, thank Brian, thank the entire team there at Adapt for extending this invitation so that we might be able to have a bit of a conversation with those who are attending. I've had the great privilege of listening in on some of the sessions that have happened before, and every presenter that preceded me, I am in awe of. Thank you so much for the extraordinary or information that has been offered. I have grown as a result of being a part of this session and look forward to implementing some of the tools that you have offered. My goal is simple. Here, I want to be able to help us to kind of build upon the information that you all have heard. Those of you who have been with this conference all day, we've had a full meal, and I recognize that. And what I simply want to do is to interpret that through the lens that I bring to this conversation, and that is one of of being a practitioner in this field for 30 years now. Every time I have to say the number, it gets a little more difficult for me to say the number. But for 30 years, a practitioner in this field and a pragmatist, if you don't mind, in taking these ideas, these tools, these concepts offered through this toolkit that I think sometimes there may be the tendency of thinking that they don't have the applicability for those of us who are working very, very consistently within our communities. And how do we relate that? Part of what it is that I hope to do is be able to express that through my experiences that I've had. And so I want to begin in what might be a bit of an unusual way, but with a little bit of a story. Um, Telling you just a little bit about myself. I know many of you recognize immediately this tool, this navigational system here. I have to share with you when I was first introduced to this thing. I think this has been one of the greatest inventions ever made. I will never forget the very first time I entered a vehicle that had a navigational system in as a part of it. I was traveling and I rented a car from Hertz. It was called the Hertz Never Lost system because you are never lost with never lost. And I got into that vehicle. I put in my destination, and this lovely, lovely voice came on. And this lovely female voice said, right turn out of the parking lot, point 3 miles to your next left turn. Please don't miss your next left turn. Now, I'm here to say that my wife, who was with me at the time, did not let me know that I missed that left turn so nicely. So I love this tool, this instrument. So this has now become ubiquitous. Now everyone has, and whether you're utilizing your phone or whether you have it in as a part of your car, we hardly go anywhere these days without using this instrument, without using this tool, without understanding the credibility of this to help us to get to our desired destination. I need to also place within the context of this story the fact that I've just recently moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, within the last couple of years. And I did so because my mother has been out here for a couple of decades, and because she is kind of advanced in age and a number of health things are kind of going on, I wanted to be close. And so I've come out here to be closer to my mom. And so when I now have frequent opportunities to go and pick my mother up and to take her on trips. Um, and because I'm not familiar with the area, I've used the navigational system. And that lovely female voice comes on and she's telling me where to make a right turn and where to make a left turn until my mother, who is an extraordinarily intelligent woman, will scream at me, say, turn that thing off. Turn that. She doesn't know what she's doing. I know a better way. And eventually, or inevitably, in every single trip with my mom will get it to the point where I turn down the volume on the navigational system and I listen to my mom. And inevitably, on almost every trip, we will eventually end up in some type of traffic jam or hit some detour or something. And while we are sitting in traffic, that the navigational system, I'm sure, would have helped us to avoid. I'm watching the time estimation of our achieving our destination get longer and longer and longer. We have enough science to avoid predictive challenges that delay our desired outcome if we choose to listen to the prompts, if we choose to pay attention to the science. Our communities are perfectly engineered to produce the results we are currently seeing. Nothing is happening randomly. There is nothing random about the opioid overdoses that are taking place. There are nothing random about the increased marijuana misuse among teenagers that many of our communities are experiencing. There's nothing random about the polysubstance misuse that many of our communities are attempting to address and are affecting our health and well-being. Nothing is random about what it is that we are seeing. In the same light, in the same token, nothing is random about prevention. Prevention cannot be random. In fact, prevention, and these terms have been utilized throughout the day, prevention has to be intentional, purposeful, and strategic. Prevention is really about, and I loved what Dr. Bethel offered earlier, that this intention is not about perfection. It's just merely about moving from our desired to fix to understanding the importance of our needing to connect. So moving from being fixers to connectors is what this is really all about. And so when I put that within the context of what we believe as preventionists, I am guided by three core values with respect to this. One is that the most effective way of addressing any problem is to prevent that problem before it starts. Two, we believe in the full engagement and empowerment of the community in their role in helping us to both understand these problems and issues and also being a part of solving these problems and issues. And lastly, and most importantly, I believe, we believe in being guided by science in order to produce population level change. And this is really where the crux of this important tool that we have and that we're discussing today really comes into play because it's not merely about how we might utilize it to understand changes that could occur and should occur within ourselves individually, but how do we do so and bring this tool and this instrument and all the learnings from it to a point where we're achieving population level change? How do we take it to scale? And so when I was asked to have a conversation with you all related to this remarkable resource that ADAPT is offering, I began to think about it in those two realms. How and what is it saying to us as individuals, but also what is it saying to us and the opportunities that we have to collectively think about the changes that ought to be made. And in that regard, I think that there are four areas where we might be able to identify we can have some influence and that can actually bring about some improvement in our ability to bring this to implementation. So when I'm thinking about how we bring and apply prevention science and the role of communities in doing so, there are four areas that I think we could pay attention to. One is our ability to translate and clarify all the great information that we heard all day today. What is our role in translating that and clarifying that on behalf of our communities? In other words, how do we help our communities prioritize health promoting relationships in a way that can make a huge, significant difference to the communities that we serve? Secondly, we can help our communities focus locally. In other words, how do we concretize this in a way that those who are in one part of the country can understand and wrap it within the context of their culture as opposed to seeing it as a one size fits all approach. There is nothing that was said today that is a blanket one size fits all paradigm. This is all intended to be leveraged locally and applied locally to your local conditions. Thirdly, we can utilize this in a way to make sure that we're able to define our strategic leverage. In other words, how does this model and paradigm align with the comprehensive set of strategies that we are bringing to bear on behalf of our communities. This is the work that we're all doing. And lastly, and here's where we're going to spend the great bulk of our conversation today. How do we make sure that we're able to utilize it to help us to engage effectively? I think there is a bit of evangelizing that it is that we can do to be able to help bring folks into the fold, into this conversation of change that I believe that this really helps us to do. So I entitled this conversation, What's Love Got to Do with It? And yes, while I am a huge fan of Tina Turner and will look for any opportunity to evoke Tina Turner in my conversations, it goes beyond that. With respect to what it is that we're here to discuss, there are four areas. First and foremost, what we've really been focused on today is to recognize the importance that relationships are prevention, that the health promoting relationships paradigm, it's really about the fact that we are creating real prevention with human connection. Real prevention begins with human connection, that trust and empathy and authentic relationships are not kind of a side case. It's not something that we do kind of after the fact or think about after the fact. It's not an add-on. It is indeed the work that we ought to be involved in. Right. So a number of the prior speakers spoke about this very eloquently. This is the work that we're into. Nothing works without it, which means and brings us to the second point, which is beliefs drives behavior, right? We've heard it all day today. When young people believe that they're not alone, when young people believe that they matter, they make choices that align with a healthier paradigm, a healthier way of being, and that our role is how do we cultivate that within our young people and within the context of the work that we are all doing? How do we find ways of bringing this to bear with respect to every young person that we encounter and within the context of the systems that we are associated with? Which brings me to the third point that culture change starts with us. Part of what it is that we're doing is looking at the values of connection and compassion and making sure that we're bringing that and integrating that in the organizations that we are all a part of. This is very pragmatic. This is about taking the time and creating the space that within the context of all of our policies, within the context of every interview that we might do, within the context of hiring anyone, within the context of any strategy or policy or practice that we are charged with employing, that we find ways of bringing these values and highlighting these values within the context of all of those things, right? And so we do this deliberately. It takes a form of deliberate practice in order to make sure that we are engaged with this. And I'm going to offer some examples about organizations that have done that as we go forward with this. And Laura spoke earlier about the fact that I'm a hope kind of guy. And part of what it is that I want to bring to this conversation is that hope really is a discipline that we develop. In the face of all the challenges that we are attempting to work and attempting to mitigate within the work that we're doing, it really is calling upon the fact that our prevention efforts have to go beyond just merely the programmatic things that we are bringing and offering. It requires courage. It requires, I'll dare say, faith, right? And I find a good bit of inspiration from the context of 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 aspects of our history that has meant the greatest and had the greatest input and the greatest impact upon myself. And so I look to heroic figures to me, to my family, to my community, such as Dr. King, when I'm informed by this. And one of my favorite quotes by Dr. King is that faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. And part of what it is that I believe Dr. King is conveying with this is the fact that faith is not about certainty or it's not determinative. Faith really is about action. Faith is about that action that we take in building bridges between the outcomes that we're wanting to achieve and the heart that we're bringing to that. It's that bridge building work that I want to apply to what it is that we do. I believe that the civil rights movement represents to me the greatest example of how prevention can truly change a nation, can truly change our individual behaviors, can truly change the outcomes on behalf of us across our country. And in fact, has impacted the entirety of the world. I think prevention holds the same kind of opportunity for us. And so, for the last number of decades, we've looked at what it is that we do in a very particular way. We understand that prior to diagnosis, we're looking at prevention and all the various aspects of prevention and what is it that we can do to mitigate someone from falling into certain lines of behavior. But then after diagnosis, there are other forms of opportunities of help and support that are required to be able to do so. And when we pay attention to this, we often refer to this as either working upstream or working downstream. And the challenge of this kind of approach is the fact that um, oftentimes those that are working upstream are not working with or engaging with or having any kind of relationship or communication with those that are working downstream. They tend to see themselves as independent, and a lot of times our funding mechanisms often reinforce that separateness of all this. We've learned a great deal about how to mitigate some of this by understanding more about harm reduction strategies and the like, and looking at where and ways that we might be able to integrate this. What I believe this paradigm offers to us is a different way of looking at this. The fact that what our true role is not to be thinking about ourselves in these siloed areas, but rather to understand that the importance of our role is that of connection. And that's the unseen work. That's the work that doesn't come with 5 steps or 7 phases. It's the real work that's really involved with understanding the relationship, the vital relationship between our public health desired outcomes and those that are impacted by the criminal justice efforts that are necessary and important to our communities. It's where public health and criminal justice come together. And I will suggest to you that the cornerstone of that bridge is prevention. And here's where the toolkit really comes into play, because the toolkit offers what I believe is really the connective tissue for building this bridge that understands that beliefs are ultimately connected to the actions that we are desiring. I've been in this work for 30 years now. I've worked in every kind of community that you can imagine. I've worked in tribal communities, inner city communities, farming towns, affluent neighborhoods. All of these communities have encountered and are exhibiting many of the issues and many of the challenges that all of you know very, very well. And everywhere I've seen the same truth. Pain looks different, but it speaks the same language. And what that has brought me to an understanding of is that my role as a preventionist often looks like being a translator. How can I translate not merely the frameworks of our work, not really merely these tools, but how can I translate it on behalf of an understanding, a real understanding of these communities, the cultures, and the experiences with which we are trying to bring the information, the science that we value so much. All of our communities are still being impacted by the issues and challenges that we are working through on a daily basis. Many of you are very, very familiar with what's going on within the context of all of our society. And while we've seen a great deal of progress in recent years that we can laud, we can applaud the fact that we're seeing decreases in overdose deaths or drug-related deaths in our communities, and the most recent reports that are coming out. These challenges are still hitting our communities very differently. And in many of our communities, the way it impacts those communities often have to be considered. I was so gratified when I heard some of the questions that came up in prior sessions and some of the conversations that were being offered about the fact that our young people are experiencing these issues and these challenges, and therefore might experience the help and the support that were being offered through different filters, through different lenses. So James Baldwin offers this thought that I thought had real relevance to what it is that we're saying. It says not everything can be faced. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Which brings me to the conversation, to the question to us as preventionists, as professionals. I'm speaking to a number of folks that are working in law enforcement and education and all the helpful fields that you're in. How do we think of ourselves not merely as preventionists and connectors, but how do we help them face this in ways that it's not just helping them to face it for them, but how do we face it with them? That's where the health promoting relationships paradigm, I think, has its greatest value. It helps us to really understand and engage in a way that might be slightly different than I did yesterday. It's not describing anything in a new way. We're not offering new information here, I might suggest. Laura spoke eloquently earlier today in terms of the massive history and literature that this is built upon, right? It's not a new discovery, but it is an old truth being rediscovered and redeployed in a way that I think has huge, huge value to what it is that we're doing. It quite frankly reminds me of what was the power of the civil rights movement to create the kind of change that it created for us. Because, like that movement was not successful because of policy papers. That movement was successful because of people and the important role of relationships. It was based upon folks coming together and sharing and listening and understanding each other and wanting to be understood and holding faith in the power of connection. Prevention is also a people powered movement. And that's where I really come to love this information that we're being offered. I recall a remarkable article in the Journal for the American Medical Association by Dr. Donald Berwick from Harvard, who spoke to this idea of the moral determinants of health, and that these moral determinants of health really refer to the values that we decide will be the foundation for the work that we do, the policies that we are trying to implement. This word is where I want to key in the investments that we're making. And the investments that I believe we are really speaking to, that we are talking about, are the investments that I heard Dr. Bethel offered earlier today when she was speaking about the ability for us to develop relational health skills, right? Valuing, appreciating, abiding. It's not merely the fact that we believe that all of those are good, and we can all agree that all of those are good things to do, they're good things to have, but rather what Dr. Berwick is offering is that if we identify and highlight these values, then we invest in these values. And if we're investing in these values, then we're going to do something that I believe is very, very profound, right? We're going to be able to do things that lead to overcoming insurmountable challenges and changes. I love here what Dr. Berwick offered. He says, healers are called to heal. And when the fabric of our communities, which health is depends upon, is torn, then healers are the ones that are being called to mend it. It is a moral law within us that insists so. And so this is, I think, the crux of who we are. We're preventionists. We are connectors. We're healers. Because when we meet folks in that space, when we truly understand how to incorporate this into our everyday lives, but also into the thoughtful decision making processes that we employ, when we come together in this way, when we truly listen and give space for this, then connection becomes courage in action. And this is where these tools really, I believe, come into play. So let's talk about a couple of them. Facilitators of connection. You've heard throughout today the great importance of these facilitators of connection. And part of what the goal is today is, while we all understand them to be vital and to be good and be necessary, and we all can really do some self-reflection and think about how well we're doing with this and wanting to facilitate this on behalf of our young people, what really comes to mind for me, for us, and our work is a quote by Dr. Maya Angelou when she says, I've learned that people will often forget what you've said. People might often forget what you've done, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And here is the crux of the matter for those of us who are really implementing these changes, these efforts that we're on behalf of. I am reminded of a organization that I worked with at the very beginning of my professional career in this way. I volunteered for this organization called Philadelphia Youth at Risk. Oh my God, look at that picture. I was so young. I didn't have any gray hairs at all. Oh my goodness. So when I was looking and thinking about this, I have this picture hung in my office, and as I was preparing for this, it really brought this to mind. It was an organization that worked with young people who, for a variety of reasons, were interacting with the judicial system. This is in the middle of Philadelphia, and part of it was that. Much like what we've heard from our prior speaker in terms of the great work that they're doing with Catalyst, it was about identifying an alternative for these young people. And what we would do is we would take these young people, and part of what it is that we were trained in is how to incorporate skills, these emotional intelligence skills, in working with these young people and in engaging with them in real ways. And part of what I find in this paradigm is the fact that these facilitators, empathy, patience, respect, vulnerability, these facilitators are not merely soft skills that we're looking to establish to develop, but as I believe a prior speaker spoke to, they are really about survival skills for many of our young people that we can help to produce. Patience is the one that really comes out to me, and because of what I wanted to share with you in terms of my experience with this is all of these sound really well when you're working and talking to many of our young people. But as was brought up before, there are a number of young people that um, for a variety of reasons are experiencing things and maybe filtering things through different sets of lenses. Zach Mercurio, who spoke eloquently this morning, uh, um, really phenomenal job. Learned a great deal from his presentation, gave an illustration of when his child was born, and a really remarkable image of a young infant reaching out and as their first act grabbing hold. And he spoke about the fact that this is innate, this is inherent in all of us, right? Every child has this grasping need and requirement, instinct that we have. And I believe that all of that is absolutely true. I've found it to be the case with my children, with all the children that I've come into contact with. But I will also share about a certain subset of young people across our country, in a variety of different kinds of communities and in a variety of different kinds of contexts that I know they are being trained through their environment, through their relationships that they have, through the circumstances and situations that they find themselves in, to ignore that grasping inherent desire. And in fact, to fight against it. And in fact, to hold back and not reach out. One of the things that these remarkable young people that we were working with in the Greater Philadelphia Youth at Risk program was that they were really, really good at what I would refer to as pushing your buttons. They would find the buttons and they would push them, because what they're looking to do is find the button that will get you to quit. And part of trying to make you quit and how baffled they were when you didn't. And part of what I'm offering here is this notion that as we are attempting to grow these facilitators of connection, part of what we want to come to, part of what patience is really about, it goes beyond the abiding calm that we heard described earlier. I would suggest that it goes deeper than that. It is really about disconnecting your quit button, right? As you're engaging with these young people and as you're engaging with those that you're attempting to work and serve, because these survival skills are always going to be the ones that are going to provide the conditions by which the beliefs that we're wanting to and foster and to encourage to grow. Which brings me to those beliefs. This is, I believe, the secret sauce of the entire thing. We there's inordinate science that backs all of this that has been discussed eminently, but part of what it is that I want to offer with respect to these five protective beliefs if they really offer, as Dr. Bethel offered earlier, they really offer kind of the blueprint for flourishing, right? They really foster what it is that is necessary for that, right? And a couple of key ideas that I want to make sure that we're clear about. We can't give these beliefs to the kids, right? We understand this, we know this, but we do have a responsibility. We do have an accountability to create the environments in which those beliefs make sense to the kids, right? That's what we're really talking about. That the belief makes sense to them. The previous speaker who was sharing about the great work that they're doing with the Catalyst program in West Virginia and how some of the young people were really ones that really did not believe. You had to spend a good bit of time before they could trust that what they were hearing and seeing and wanting to believe was actually true. It really is about them trusting these five beliefs, right? And so that's why in every situation, every opportunity that we have to foster this in the classroom or in the coalition meeting. We have to create opportunities that reinforce these beliefs. This goes as far as we're going to implement an evidence-based program or practice or strategy. We ask the question of ourselves, where and how can we foster the five protective beliefs in the execution and the implementation of this process, right? This work is so vital and so important. It's the reason that we want to move prevention from being merely a curricula, but being a culture shift that occurs. I want to spend just a moment talking about one of these core beliefs. And you've heard this earlier today and the importance of when this shows up in a young person's life and the great value that it has. But I'm going to tell you about when it hit me really, really concretely. I had the great fortune of working with the state of Alaska, and they were executing and implementing a framework of shared and protective risk, a shared risk and protective factor framework in the state. And they had done this great work and created this survey and received some information about their young people that I thought was highly, highly, highly important for them. And so if I can orient you to what it is that you're seeing here on the left-hand side, you see the list of those protective factors, some of which has been spoken to and talked about earlier today, right? Feeling that they matter, being able to control their emotion, being able to have a sense of efficacy, right? These protective factors that they've identified here, right? And as you go along looking at this, you can see here it was mapped up against where the young person reported that they felt that that protective factor was present and where the young person reported that they felt that the protective factor was absent in their life, right? And then they based that and related that to where and how these other conditions, mental well-being conditions and indicators really showed up, whether they felt alone, whether they felt hopeless or sad, how seriously that they consider things as serious as suicide. Let me share with you here just this one about where they felt that they mattered to people. Here, they say, and they showed that those that said that they felt that it mattered, that they felt that they matter to people, 14% of them said that they felt alone, that they had strong feelings that they felt alone. Where they said that they felt they did not matter to people, where this feeling of mattering was absent that they've identified. Look how huge the jump is of those that felt like they were alone. And that's feeling alone. When you look at things that are even more serious, like those that seriously considered suicide in the past year, those who made a plan for suicide in the past year, just take a look at the jump in which those that felt that mattering to other people was present versus those that said that that was absent in their life. I bring this out just to concretize the fact that while we are speaking about these ideas and these concepts that can seem sometimes ephemeral, that seems like, oh, they're lofty goals. No, these are very tangible, very concrete, very impactful things that we can help to foster. Um, Prevention is belonging to our young people. My son introduced this to me. My son is an educator, has been an educator for the past 15 years. He's worked with young people at every level. And part of what he shared with me with respect to this is this incredible paradigm that talks about how some young people filter their engagement, their relationship. And while some of the language is similar and may vary in different ways, the idea is still the same. I believe exactly I loved what Zach Mercurio offered earlier in terms of the distinction between belonging and mattering. I think that that lines up extraordinarily well. The great point and great value here is that when we work from a standpoint in our prevention efforts, that when beliefs are deepened, behavior changes. And the goal that we have is to foster these beliefs where young people feel like they are welcome, that they feel like they're safe, that they actually belong, that they're included, that they feel like they matter, that there's this sense of justice, meaning they have some autonomy, they are able to make things right in a certain way, that they have an opportunity where folks recognize their value and their worth and their respect. Those overlapping items really speak to this part that we're trying to foster. Ella Baker, an icon of the civil rights movement, talked about and shared this quote: strong people don't need strong leaders. What she was really speaking to, in my view, is the fact that our role is not to lead, but our role is to cultivate the strength in others. That part of what this health promoting health promoting relationship paradigm speaks to is the fact that it reminds us that this role is a shared project. This idea of engaging with each other is something that the youth share in as well as we share in, right? That they have equal roles in that. In order to foster that, we have to develop what the kit refers to as these micro skills that I loved how Laura kind of broke it down, but I love even more importantly when we had the panel Chief Alvarez and the teachers Carla was able to speak to earlier about how we foster these into the work that we do in order to build trust and build agency, making sure that we foster the skill and the mindset of presence, reflection, empowerment. How are we doing this on a opportune day-to-day basis with ourselves? And if we are doing that, I loved how Laura talked about the opportunity of the social connection for us. How do we do that? If we do that, then for many of us who are familiar with the work that we've been doing in prevention, you're very familiar with this framework. And this is what we've been doing in prevention for the last 25 to 30 years now. And part of what it is that I'm sharing with you is that as we begin to implement this, what you begin to understand and appreciate is that prevention doesn't merely look like this. In fact, it better looks like this. And and when I think about and when I look at and think about how prevention in action appears and looks like, whether I'm talking about Dr. Wanda Boone, for example, in North Carolina, who does a tremendous work with the Together for Resilient Youth Coalition, or my great friends there in Detroit, Mr. Merce Arbuckle, who has worked with the Center for Urban Youth and Family Development there in Detroit, bringing about these systems of change around this, but also in our rural areas. My good friends, Trent Coffey, who works with the Schools Together, Allowing No Drugs, the STAND Coalition, and incorporating this work, or Tabitha Curtis and the Tennessee Alliance for Drug Endangered Children, and the relationships that she brings as being a part and associated, changing ultimately the culture of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, bringing law enforcement into this work of compassion to be able to bring about changes. This is how we move from this individualized understanding of what it is that we have to do to how does this affect our systems? How do we make prevention culture wide, right? Uh, When I was working in South Africa, I learned of this phrase, Ubuntu. Ubuntu really refers to the collective we. Ubuntu refers to the fact that I can't be all that I ought to be unless I help you become all that you ought to be, that I am interconnected with you and interdependent upon you in order to achieve what we want as a society. It is this concept, this principle that I want to align here with the health promoting relationships paradigm that challenges us to think about how organizationally we can begin to implement and integrate these ideas, these values. When we understand that the mission of this generation of prevention professionals is to turn research into relationship and relationships into resilience, moving through what Dr. McClure shared as the social ripple effect. It's what has been suggested and spoken to throughout the day that, yes, all of this talks and speaks to the fact that there are some things that I need to pay attention to. There are some things and ways in which I can think about how I'm going to do this differently. But that is not where it needs to end. It has to move beyond that to how are we affecting those relationships that are around us, and through those relationships affecting our broader community through the organizations that we're serving and then the systems that we are serving. This is how we get and achieve population level change through this remarkable resource that we have here. One example of the importance of our role that our systems need to play is in acknowledging trauma and experiences that are being offered by the young people that we serve. Patty shared that I have a great honor of being a part of the board for the National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. And one of the things that we've done recently with that organization, this organization works directly with law enforcement and first responders and social workers and trying to help understand the importance and the relevance of the young person that's within the context or the proximity of being affected by substance use or substance manufacturing or sales and the like, and understanding that these children, the executive director, Eric Nation, who was a law enforcement professional for I think close to two decades, if not 2 decades, before coming to National DEC, uh, uh, used to often suggest how he, as a law enforcement individual, will go into these contexts, go into these environments with a certain kind of mindset and particular mindset, which is go after the bad guy, arrest the bad guy, and the like, and never being able to observe and see, to notice the child within the context. He says, and I quote him, he says it all the time, Children are the first impacted and the most impacted, but often received, or are often the last ones to receive any resources and help and support. This is illustrated by a report that the Crimes Against Children Research Center, who's done some remarkable work with us out of University of New Hampshire, helped us to pull out. And I pulled out one quote that they identified when they reviewed and spoke to and interviewed more than 1,500 drug endangered children across our nation, where one of them spoke, or where some of them spoke to the fact of they tried to speak up and went to their local counselors, whether it was in the school context or others, but was told that this thing doesn't happen here. So they quit, and she quit, or they quit rather, forgive me, they quit speaking up. That quit button is not merely with those of us who are working with young people. That quit button is also with our young people. Part of what it is that we are charged with in this work is how do we help develop the skills of those young people to do what I offered earlier, which is how do we help them to disconnect that quit button that they might have. Here's where the strength of engaging young people as leaders in this work that we're doing. I heard a number of questions of how are we going to be able to diffuse this within the context of the work that we're doing? What can we do? I recognize the importance of that question, and I also recognize the reality of that question. And one of the things that I would offer in addition to some of the recommendations that were offered earlier is engaging young people in bringing that, making them ambassadors for this work, for this kind of science, imbuing in them the importance of knowing how to be self-aware, the importance of understanding these facilitators of connection, the importance of understanding and cultivating and nurturing these beliefs that they might be able to find as being protective, right? Engage them. Somebody said it once and said it earlier, I believe, is that young people hear young people first, right? And part of what it is that I would offer to us is that we might be able to benefit greatly by engaging young people in this conversation and helping and letting them, allowing them to lead us with respect to implementing this paradigm. So I'll leave you with this. I started off talking about the fact that part of this hope is and faith is building bridges, is recognizing the actions that are necessary. And sometimes we build bridges and we cross bridges in order to produce changes that affect the entirety of our nation. I had the extraordinary privilege of at one point in time being able to be connected to the late great Dr. Congressman John Lewis, forgive me, Congressman John Lewis, and we were happened to be working in Oklahoma with the Cherokee Nation at the same time, and part of what I had as an opportunity to hear wisdom from this remarkable, iconic hero of mine is he talked about this idea that has become synonymous with his name, getting into good trouble. And I kind of took that to heart and align it with the work that we do. I think all of us, as if you're in the work in the field of prevention, guess what? We're getting into good trouble. We disrupt a lot of stuff, right? That's what we're doing. And so, what does that mean in terms of how we think about um, this conversation today? Well, I think we can get into good trouble by making sure that we lead with connection, right? It's not merely about implementing with fidelity, but we need to implement with connection. Prioritize authentic, empathetic, and consistent relationships throughout the delivery of the programs, practices, policies that we're trying to execute, that we take it upon ourselves to model the five protective beliefs, right? Create environments where not just as one of the prior speakers said earlier, not just our children, but everyone that we're encountering feel seen and valued and capable and supported. which leads us to a more a stronger society. That we practice micro skills with intention, right? Being thoughtful about it, right? It doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we are disciplined about it, because we've determined that we want to pay attention to this. And align the systems that we live in and work with and the cultures that we are all a part of with these health promoting relationship values that we spoke about today, right? And we can do that little by little by little. Um, and with this, we want to build prevention that people can feel, right? And so I will leave with this one challenge. I would ask that each of you consider to pick one facilitator of connection to practice intentionally. Pick one micro skill that you will model consistently, and pick one system shift that you might be able to bring to your organization or coalition that you might be able to work towards, right? Just start with one and move from there. And with that, I just really want to say this is an extraordinary resource that has been developed and offered for us. I think our field has been needing this for some time, and so I want to say thank you to Adapt and to all of those that were part of putting this together. Thank you for the invitation for this, and thank you all for what you do and who you're choosing to be in this world. Thank you all. God bless you all. And with that, I believe I can stop sharing now.
Thank you, Carlton. What I what I just want to mention to the audience, in case you're confused by the image that Carlton has shown of our toolkit, what I think is so neat about that is that he's showing a former version of the toolkit
Yeah.
from the last 3 institutes before we created the final version. And Carlton, we hadn't actually shared with them like the different versions of the toolkit covers, right? And you just drew that out for everyone. And I love that because you see just the different ways that it's evolved and come along. So, I always pause, Carlton, when I hear you speak. I pause because you say so many profound things that resonate so deeply with our audience that I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that you have a gift and you have brought forward messaging that I don't know that anyone else could. And I see, the various drivers because I've gotten to know you a little bit. I see your spirituality, I see your incredible knowledge of prevention science, I see your experience and all of that merging together to deliver to us this gift. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, a few things that I just want to draw out that speak just so perfectly to what we are hoping people leave with today. Connection is courage in action. Oh boy, it does take courage, right? It's going to take some courage to look within and to produce without, right? It's going to take courage to have these conversations with your communities and try to get buy in. One of our questions that came in earlier about the playbooks was for Chief Vasquez was this is important. Miles Bonnie, if you're listening right now, I saw your question and I'm sorry we couldn't get to it. Your question was valid if we want to bring this to communities, but we know that the mindset isn't quite there yet, right? How do we do that? How do we do that? Connection is courage in action, and just being willing to start that conversation and bring some of these critical messages from this presentation forward. You provided that bridge. So thank you for that, Carlton. Another thing that struck me was, and by the way, there were no questions that came in, which is why I'm taking liberty to share with you what struck me. I think we are all listening so intently to what you were saying and just like absorbing it. You suggested that health promoting relationships can be a value, a formal value that we build into the foundation of our work, our policies, and our investments. Yes, yes. The ADAPT team has already adopted health promoting relationships as not just a value, but we are considering adding it to our mission statement
Yeah.
at the end of one way that we advance mindsets and equip our communities with knowledge and skills. It's that important. It's that important, and it's so fundamental. So thank you for that. Thank you for that lens of health promoting relationships can be a value. They can be something that we lift up over and over and over again in our way of being with everyone that we encounter, not just youth. They could be the way our organization functions and what we adhere to, along with all of the many other important values. So I guess I would ask you this, the final statement that really struck me on your last slide: build prevention that people can feel. Is that your quote?
Yeah.
I want everyone to linger with that for a second. Build prevention that people can feel. Because I want to offer you an opportunity to say one last thing about that. And it's a perfect segue into our closing remarks and our call to action. Carlton, is there anything else you'd like to say to build on build prevention that people can feel? One last comment.
First of all, thank you for all the comments and everyone who listened and it resonated with. That actually was born out of earlier work that I've done, and I had a remarkable boss at the time, Donna Cooper, and I was trying. I was I've gone away trying to figure out how to implement this prevention framework called Communities That Care within the context of the city of Philadelphia, right? And as you might imagine, kind of the challenges with doing that within some of the communities that we were serving here. And I was very impressed by the science that was offered and the opportunity and the potential for that science to really have some effect on the communities that I care desperately about and wanting to bring it to them. And I'll never forget Donna saying to me on one particular day, says, um, "All that sounds great, Carlton, but how is it going to? How are you going to make it real? How are you going to make it real and connect it
Mm,
to the people that you're serving?" And what that meant for me is we're talking about systems and we're talking about kind of these theoretical frameworks. We're talking about these paradigms. Um, but through it all, I put a message on my in my office at the time. Said, "Can I hug the child I helped today?" Like with all my policy work and all the
mm,
program execution and implementation, for me, it all boiled down to can I take this work and efforts and tie it to a child that was actually helped? Can I hug the child that I helped today? It's all about making it real. Folks will always remember how you made them feel through the work that we're doing. And so that's where that quote comes from.
thank you. Thank you, Carlton. I will be in touch because I want to talk a little bit more about everything I just heard. But on behalf of the ADAPT team, I want to thank you for closing us up so beautifully. And I will shift gears now into some closing remarks directly related to that. Thank you.
It's been an honor.
Okay. Zoom team, can we advance to the first slide here? Carlton mentioned build prevention that people can feel. And what I'd like to do is bring up in our final moments here together, bring up, thank you, the first stanza of the poem that I presented earlier. And this is why. This poem was written 2 years ago when I was developing the connection paradigm with the psychiatric nurses. And little did I know that the first stanza of this poem would become a call to action. When Carlton says, build prevention that people can feel, he's talking about that stirring within, paying attention to that stirring deep within. And do you know what I think that is? I think it's intrinsic motivation to do something, to act upon everything that you've learned today. So I'm going to challenge you not just to pay attention to the stirring, but to go further. Silence all those distractions, any noise in your life, not just at the individual level, but at the organizational level too. We all have a lot of noise going on, right? There are many demands of all of us. But think about silencing those and beginning to connect with those youth, but importantly, with your team members, with your organizations, with your communities. Connect with intention. Allow yourself to be seen and to see others fully. I am seen and I am loved. Start engaging in ways that matter. We are empowering you. Carry this forward right now in a way that makes sense for you because you can meet this material where it's at in any way that makes sense for you and work on it on a daily basis and practice humility. Put others first. Think about this impact on others and on our world, quite honestly. But this could be if we created a culture and a whole ecosystem of health promoting relationships at the base of everything that we do. The second thing that I'd like to mention is that you have assessments within that toolkit. There are 3 of them, and they are a great starting point. Earlier, I was asked, you know, there's a lot of information. It can be overwhelming. Where should I start? I don't want you to be afraid of it, right? I don't want you to feel overwhelmed, is a better way of saying it, because it is overwhelming. There's a lot that we could do. And if you're a perfectionist like I am, it's daunting to think about, I want to get this right? It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about choosing exactly what Carlton said, one thing to start with, one facilitator, one micro skill. And maybe a good way to pick those facilitators or micro skills is to use the assessment that we have in our toolkit. Go ahead and do some self-reflection on where you're strong, where you might want to spend more time, some intimate time with full presence, non-judgment, right? Whatever is revealed to you as you do those assessments. There is a third assessment, the organizational action planning assessment that Brian mentioned earlier. And I just want to double down on that because we're in the process now in 2026, we'll be unfolding an actual concrete example of an organizational action plan. There's flavors of it, right? Like you can add it as a value, health promoting relationships. You can add it to your mission. You can train on it so that any program that you implement, right, has this kind of as an approach. All of that makes sense, but use it as a starting point for reflecting as an organization for next steps. Next slide, please. This is our third time mentioning. If you are interested, in my mind, and I've been very transparent and tried to be very authentic with all of you today because we are all on the ADAPT team trying to practice what we preach. And it feels so much better to give a presentation authentically than it does to try to be someone you think people want you to be. But to really exhibit and exude everything that we have in this toolkit in a way that makes sense for me. And today, what I'd like to say is I have thought over the 6 years that ADAPT has been in practice, I've thought, you know what, we seem to have this base of people that really care about certain things, certain topics. And if this is a topic that you just are passionate about, that it has struck you, you are feeling that stirring, and you are ready to express that intrinsic motivation and become a true ambassador of this and learn how to share this information in more ways than just sharing the toolkit and talking about it, right? But share it in a more formal way with our 7 main messages. Go ahead and sign up to be an ambassador for health promoting relationships. And our next step is then to guide you and to create materials on hopefully what is going to be most helpful for you in breaking this down into usable pieces and supporting you in carrying this work forward in your communities. So I'd like to end with this. Next slide, please. I want you to know that you are seen and loved, that you matter, that you can influence your life and health and prevention, that you can do hard things because the work of prevention is hard, and that you have support. ADAPT is here to support you, and we will do everything in our power within our capacity to continue to help bring this content to life for you in ways that you can use. You'll see our email up here, and as you know, ADAPT is funded with discretionary funding. We don't get funding just automatically every year from the HIDA program. This was the brainchild of the HIDA program 6 years ago to fund a training and technical assistance mechanism. If you feel compelled, I wanted to offer our email to you for this reason. If you'd like to share what this content has meant to you and for your community, ways that you might bring it forward. If there was something that struck you about a presentation, the HIDA program delivered this for free. And if you send us an email with your comments and just tell us what state, county that you're in, we'll forward that to your HIDA director. There are 33 HIDA directors across the United States. We'll forward it to them and we'll let them know the impact that they're having with this small but mighty bucket of funding. So I just wanted to offer that. And of course, we're happy to hear from you. You can share anything with us if you just want to talk to the ADAPT team too. But these are the ways that you can get in touch with us. And we'll wrap up today. Thank you for joining us for the 2025 HIDA Prevention Summit. On behalf of the entire ADAPT team and the National HIDA Program, we appreciate you. You matter to us, and we fully support you and the work that you're doing. Have an awesome day.
Come on now. Say hey. Listen up, y'all, 'cause I've got something to say. Hey, hey. Well, you better get ready, 'cause you know I came to play. Hey, hey. I'm trying to really good time.